Dr. James Rodriguez had always been the kind of person who stayed late at work, while his colleagues at the International Space Research Station headed home for dinner with their families. He preferred the quiet hum of the laboratory after hours. The orbital station floated peacefully above Earth, and James found something calming about working while the planet slowly turned beneath them. On this particular Tuesday evening, James was running his usual tests on cosmic radiation samples. He had been doing this same routine for 3 years now, analyzing particles from deep space to understand more about our universe. Most nights, the readings were predictable, almost boring, but tonight felt different. Around 11:30 p.m., his computer started beeping in a way he had never heard before. The sound was urgent, almost musical. James pushed his glasses up his nose and leaned closer to the screen. The energy readings were unlike anything in his database. The numbers were jumping around like crazy, showing patterns that shouldn't exist according to everything he knew about space. At first, he thought his equipment was broken. He ran diagnostics, checked all the connections, even restarted the whole system, but the strange readings kept coming. Whatever was out there was getting closer to their station. James grabbed his coffee mug and walked over to the main observation window. Space looked the same as always, endless black dotted with distant stars. But then he saw something that made him nearly drop his coffee. A soft, blue light was moving toward them, growing brighter by the second. The object wasn't like any spacecraft he had ever seen. Instead of the sharp, angular design of human ships, this one seemed to flow like liquid metal. It moved with a grace that reminded him of a dancing butterfly, completely silent as it approached their station. His hands were shaking as he reached for the emergency communication button. Protocol demanded that he immediately alert the station commander about any unidentified objects, but something made him pause. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the way the ship moved so peacefully, without any threatening gestures. Instead of hitting the alarm, James watched as the mysterious craft came to a gentle stop just outside the station's docking bay. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, a soft chime echoed through the station's communication system. It wasn't coming from any human technology. The sound repeated 3 times, like a polite knock on a door. James realized that whoever was inside that ship was trying to communicate. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. But he managed to activate the station's external communication array. "This is Dr. James Rodriguez of the International Space Research Station," he said into his microphone, his voice barely steady. "Can you understand me?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the most beautiful voice he had ever heard responded in perfect English. "Greetings, Dr. Rodriguez. I am Princess Lyrale of the Enduring Collective. I come in peace, seeking knowledge about your world." James had to sit down. His legs felt like jelly. He was having humanity's first contact with an alien species, and it was happening during his quiet night shift while eating leftover pizza. "You speak our language," he said, still not quite believing this was real. "My ship has been monitoring your communications for several rotations of your planet. Our translation systems have learned your speech patterns. I hope I am not causing you distress." Her voice had a melodic quality, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Even through the communication system, James could hear kindness in her tone. No distress," James said quickly. "Just surprised. Are you really from another planet?" "Yes, from a world your people have not yet discovered. I have been sent to observe and learn about Earth and its inhabitants. You are the first human I have spoken with directly." James looked around his empty laboratory. This was the biggest moment in human history, and he was experiencing it alone while wearing his favorite worn-out sweater, with a coffee stain on the front. "Would you like to meet?" he asked, hardly believing he was having this conversation. There was a pause. "I would find that most educational. However, I must ask, are you authorized to make contact with representatives of other worlds?" James almost laughed. "Honestly, no. I'm supposed to report any unusual activity immediately. But this seems too important to mess up with bureaucracy. I appreciate your directness, Dr. Rodriguez. In my culture, honesty is highly valued. What happened next changed everything. The airlock system activated on its own, but not in any threatening way. James watched his instruments as the alien ship somehow interfaced with their docking system, using technology that seemed decades ahead of anything humans had developed. "I am now aboard your station." Princess Liralay's voice came through the intercom. "I am making my way to your location. I hope my appearance will not alarm you." James straightened his sweater and tried to make his hair look less messy. He was about to meet the first alien visitor to Earth, and he wanted to make a good impression for humanity when the laboratory door opened. James forgot how to breathe. Princess Lirale was unlike anything he could have imagined. She was tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow softly from within. Her hair moved like it was underwater, and her eyes held an ancient wisdom that made James feel like a child. But what struck him most was how she smiled. It was warm and genuine, exactly like a human smile. "Hello, Dr. Rodriguez," she said, her actual voice even more beautiful than it had sounded through the speakers. "Thank you for welcoming me. Please call me James," he managed to say, "and thank you for not, invading or anything." She laughed, and the sound filled the room like music. "Invasion is not our way. We prefer conversation." And so began the most extraordinary conversation of James's life. They talked for hours, with Princess Lirale asking endless questions about human culture, emotions, and daily life. She was particularly fascinated by human creativity and the way people express feelings through art and music. In return, she shared stories about her world and the vast community of civilizations that existed beyond Earth's knowledge. She spoke of planets with purple skies and floating cities, of species that communicated through colors, and of technologies that seemed like magic. As the night wore on, James realized that this wasn't just first contact. It was the beginning of a friendship that would change both of their lives forever. Neither of them knew that this simple meeting between a curious scientist and a diplomatic princess would soon challenge the beliefs of two entire civilizations. 3 weeks had passed since that first incredible night, and James found himself living a double life. During the day, he worked alongside his colleagues, pretending everything was normal. He attended meetings, filed reports, and made small talk about weekend plans. But every evening, after the last person left the station, his real life began. Princess Lirale would arrive quietly, her ship appearing like a gentle whisper against the darkness of space. She had figured out how to dock without triggering any automatic systems, and James had learned which security cameras to temporarily disable. They had become quite the team at keeping their meetings secret. These weren't just casual visits anymore. They had developed a routine that felt surprisingly natural. James would brew 2 cups of tea. He had discovered that Lirale loved Earth's herbal teas, especially chamomile. She would bring small devices from her world that projected incredible holographic displays of distant galaxies and alien civilizations. "Your people have such fascinating emotions," Lirale said one evening, watching James laugh at a comedy show on his tablet. "On my world, we appreciate humor, but it's much more structured. Your spontaneous laughter is beautiful." James paused the video. "You don't laugh like this on your planet?" "We experience joy, but it's usually expressed through changes in our skin's luminescence or through harmonized tones. Physical laughter like yours is considered quite intense." "Intense?" James grinned. "Wait until you hear me really laugh at something funny." These conversations had become the highlight of James's day. Lirale was endlessly curious about human nature. She wanted to understand why people cried at movies, why they kept pets, why they sang in the shower when no one was listening. In return, she shared knowledge that made James's mind spin with possibilities. She had shown him technology that could heal injuries in minutes, energy systems that never depleted, and mathematical concepts that could revolutionize space travel. But she always emphasized that this knowledge came with conditions. "My people have strict rules about sharing advanced technology," she explained during one of their late-night talks. "We've seen civilizations destroy themselves when they gain power too quickly. But you're sharing it with me." James pointed out I'm sharing ideas, not blueprints, and only because. She paused, her skin glowing slightly brighter, something James had learned happened when she was experiencing strong emotions. Because what? Because I trust you. Because you see this knowledge as a way to help people, not control them. That trust had grown into something neither of them had expected. James found himself thinking about Lyrale during his regular work hours. Not just about the amazing things she taught him, but about the way she tilted her head when she was curious, or how her eyes sparkled when she discovered something new about human culture. For her part, Lyrale had begun experiencing emotions that were foreign to her people. The Andorians were logical beings who valued knowledge and order above all else. Personal attachments, especially strong ones, were seen as distractions from their higher purposes. I think I'm developing what you humans call affection, she admitted. One night, her voice softer than usual. James felt his heart skip a beat. Is that bad? For your people? I mean, it's complicated. My kind doesn't form bonds the way humans do. We have partnerships for breeding and intellectual collaboration. But emotional attachment like what I'm experiencing, it's rare. Some would say dangerous. Dangerous how? Because it makes us act irrationally. It makes us prioritize individual connections over the collective good. James set down his teacup. But is that really so wrong? Caring about someone? According to my mother, yes. According to everything I was taught, yes. But being here with you, learning about human emotion and creativity, I'm beginning to question those teachings. Their relationship was becoming more complicated by the day. James had stopped sleeping well, constantly worried about discovery. Every time his supervisor asked about his evening activities, his heart raced. Every time a colleague mentioned unusual energy readings, he felt sick with anxiety. Meanwhile, Lyrale was struggling with her own people's expectations. Her mission was supposed to last only 2 weeks, but she had been extending it repeatedly, making excuses to her superiors about needing more time for thorough observation. I should have reported back to my mother days ago, she confessed. She's beginning to ask questions about my extended absence. Your mother, Queen Zephyra, ruler of our collective, she sent me on this mission personally. Disappointing her would have serious consequences. The weight of their situation was becoming clearer to both of them. They weren't just friends sharing knowledge. They were two beings from different worlds, who had developed feelings that could destroy both of their lives. Maybe we should stop meeting, James said one evening, though the words felt like poison in his mouth. Perhaps that would be wise, Lyrale agreed, but her skin dimmed noticeably as she spoke. They sat in silence for several minutes, neither wanting to be the first to leave. I don't want to stop, James finally admitted. Neither do I. So what do we do? I don't know. In all my education, in all the scenarios we prepared for, no one ever discussed what to do when an Andorian develops deep emotional connections with another species. James reached across the table and gently touched her hand. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse with soft light at his touch. Then maybe we're writing new rules, he said. Lyrale looked at their joined hands. My people would say this is exactly the kind of rational behavior that emotional attachment causes. And they'd be right, James smiled. But maybe being a little irrational isn't always bad. What they didn't know was that their secret was already unraveling. Dr. Patricia Wong, James's longtime colleague, had noticed his recent behavior changes. His constant tiredness, his distraction during meetings, his habit of staying late every single night. She had also detected some unusual energy signatures around the station during evening hours. At the same time, Queen Zephyra had become increasingly concerned about her daughter's prolonged mission. The reports Lyrale was sending back were thorough, but somehow different in tone. They contained detailed observations about human emotional responses and cultural practices, but seemed to show an unusual level of personal investment in the subject matter. Both sides were beginning to suspect that something significant was happening, something that went far beyond a simple diplomatic observation mission. The question was who would discover the truth first, and what the consequences would be for James and Lyrale's growing bond. As they sat together that night, hands still touching, Neither of them realized that their next meeting would be their last secret one. Thursday started like any other day at the space station, but James woke up with an uneasy feeling in his stomach. He had been having strange dreams about flashing lights and angry voices. As he got dressed for work, he tried to shake off the worry, but something felt different in the air. Dr. Patricia Wong had arrived early that morning, which was unusual for her. She was normally the type of person who showed up exactly on time, never a minute early or late. But today she was already at her computer when James walked into the main laboratory. Morning. Patricia, James said, trying to sound casual. You're here early. She looked up from her screen with an expression he couldn't quite read. I've been reviewing some interesting data from the past few weeks. Energy readings that don't match anything in our database. James felt his coffee cup slip slightly in his hands. Oh, what kind of readings? The kind that happen every evening around the same time. The kind that suggests we've had regular visits from something not of this world. Before James could respond, Patricia stood up and walked over to him. Her face was serious, but not angry. James, we've worked together for 5 years. I know you better than almost anyone. Something has been going on with you lately, and I think it's connected to these energy signatures. James opened his mouth to deny everything, but the words wouldn't come. Patricia had always been sharp, and lying to her felt impossible. I know this puts you in a difficult position, she continued, but whatever is happening here, it's too big for you to handle alone. These readings show technology that's decades ahead of ours, if someone has made contact. Patricia, I can explain, James started, but she held up her hand. You don't need to explain right now. But I do need you to know that I've already filed a preliminary report with Station Commander Davis. He's calling a meeting for this afternoon. James felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Everything he and Lyrale had built together was about to come crashing down. But even worse, he realized that tonight was the night she had promised to introduce him to some of her peoples. Advanced healing technology, she would be walking into a trap. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Queen Zephyra was experiencing her own moment of discovery. She stood in the council chamber of her magnificent palace, reading the latest report from her daughter with growing concern. The report was supposed to be a standard diplomatic assessment, but it read more like a personal journal. Lyrale wrote about human laughter with genuine wonder, described their music with poetic language, and discussed their capacity for sacrifice and love as if these were revolutionary concepts. This is not the daughter I sent to observe primitive beings, Queen Zephyr said to her advisor, General Kalen. This reads like someone who has become personally involved with her subjects. General Kalen, a stern military officer who had served the royal family for decades, nodded grimly, Your Majesty. We have also detected unauthorized extensions to the princess's mission timeline. She was scheduled to return weeks ago. Summon the royal fleet, the queen commanded, her voice echoing through the chamber like thunder. We leave immediately for the human space station. If my daughter has compromised her mission through emotional attachment, the consequences will be severe. Back on the space station, James was having the worst day of his professional life. The afternoon meeting with Commander Davis had been a disaster. Patricia had presented her evidence clearly and professionally, showing energy readings that could only come from advanced alien technology. Commander Davis, usually calm and collected, had gone pale when he saw the data. Within an hour, the station was buzzing with activity. Security personnel were everywhere. Scientists were analyzing every inch of the station, and James found himself under house arrest in his own quarters. Dr. Rodriguez, Commander Davis said during a private conversation, if what Dr. Wong suspects is true, you've been in contact with extraterrestrial beings without authorization. Do you understand how serious this is? James nodded miserably. Sir, I can explain everything, but you need to understand that they come in peace. Princess Lyrale has never shown any hostile intentions. Princess, the commander's eyebrows shot up. You're on a first-name basis with alien royalty. Before James could answer, every alarm in the station started blaring. Emergency lights flashed red, and the automated voice system announced multiple unidentified spacecraft approaching. All personnel to emergency stations. Through his quarter's small window, James could see them. Not just Liralay's graceful ship, but an entire fleet of vessels that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. The largest ship was magnificent and terrifying, shaped like a crystalline cathedral that seemed to bend light around itself. James knew without being told that Queen Zephyra had arrived, and she was not happy. In the station's command center, chaos reigned. Officers ran between stations, trying to coordinate a response to something they had never trained for. Commander Davis was shouting orders, but everyone knew they were completely outmatched. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Chen from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the largest vessel." "Put it through," Davis commanded. The voice that filled the command center was unlike anything the humans had ever heard. It was powerful, ancient, and carried the weight of absolute authority. "This is Queen Zephyra of the Endorian Collective. I have come to retrieve my daughter and address the breach of protocol that has occurred on this station. I demand to speak with whoever has been in unauthorized contact with Princess Liralle." James felt his heart pounding as he listened from his quarters. This was exactly what he and Liralle had feared would happen. Commander Davis activated his microphone with shaking hands. "Your Majesty, this is Commander Davis of the International Space Research Station. We are prepared to cooperate fully with your investigation. You will surrender the human who has compromised my daughter's mission. This individual will face judgment according to our laws." At that moment, a smaller ship detached from the fleet. James recognized it immediately as Liralay's vessel. She was coming to the station, probably unaware that both her mother and human security forces were waiting for her. As her ship approached the docking bay, James realized that within minutes, everything would come to a head. The secret relationship that had grown between two beings from different worlds was about to be exposed to both their civilizations. He pressed his face against the window, watching Liralay's ship dock with its usual grace. She had no idea what she was walking into. In a few moments, she would face her angry mother, confused human officials, and the possibility that their connection might be destroyed forever. James closed his eyes and hoped that somehow their bond would be strong enough to survive what was coming next. The docking bay had never been so tense. Human security officers stood along the walls, their weapons lowered but ready. Commander Davis waited near the airlock with Dr. Patricia Wong beside him, both looking like they were about to witness either first contact or the end of the world. James had been escorted from his quarters under guard, but he insisted on being present when Liralle arrived. "She needs to see a friendly face," he had argued. "If you want this to go peacefully, let me help." Commander Davis had reluctantly agreed, though James was flanked by two security officers who watched his every move. The airlock hissed open, and Princess Liralle stepped through. She moved with her usual grace, but James could see the tension in her shoulders. Her luminescent skin was dimmer than usual, and her eyes darted around the room, taking in the armed humans and the obvious signs of a security lockdown. "James," she said, her voice uncertain, "what's happening here?" Before he could answer, the station's communication system crackled to life. Queen Zephyr's voice filled the docking bay, cold and commanding. "Daughter, you will explain yourself." Now, Liralay's skin went completely pale, something James had never seen before. She looked around the room again, finally understanding that their secret had been discovered. "Mother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I didn't know you were coming. Clearly, your mission was supposed to end weeks ago. Your reports have become increasingly personal. And now I find you here, on schedule for another unauthorized meeting." Commander Davis stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we're prepared to discuss this situation diplomatically. We had no knowledge of these meetings until today." Silence. Queen Zephyr's voice cut through the air like a blade. "I'm not addressing you, human. I am speaking to my daughter, who has apparently forgotten her duty to her people." James watched Liralay's face crumble. He had never seen her look so small, so vulnerable. The confident princess who had shared wonders of the universe with him was gone, replaced by a daughter afraid of disappointing her mother. "The fault is mine," James called out, stepping forward despite the guards trying to hold him back. Princess Lyrale was only doing her job. "If anyone should be blamed, you dare speak in my presence." Queen Zephyr's voice rose, and the entire station seemed to vibrate with her anger. "You are the cause of this contamination. My daughter was sent to observe your primitive culture, not to be corrupted by it." Corrupted? James felt his own anger rising. She hasn't been corrupted. She's learned. She's grown. She's become more than she was before. Through the communication system, they could hear Queen Zephyr's sharp intake of breath. "More? You think exposure to your emotional weakness makes her more than what she was? She is royalty of the Endorian collective. She was perfect before your influence." Lyrale had been standing silently, but at her mother's words, something changed in her posture. Her back straightened, and her skin began to glow brighter. "Perfect," she repeated, her voice growing stronger. "Mother, I was never perfect. I was empty." "Lyrale," Queen Zephyr's voice carried a warning. "No, let me speak." Lyrale stepped into the center of the room, positioning herself between the human officers and the communication console. "For 23 years, I have done everything expected of me. I studied, I trained, I followed every protocol, but I never understood why any of it mattered." James could see Commander Davis and Dr. Patricia exchanging glances. This was clearly not what they had expected from first contact. "These humans taught me something our people never could," Lyrale continued. "They taught me what it means to care about someone more than yourself. They taught me that wisdom without compassion is hollow. They taught me that connection, not isolation, is what makes life worth living. Emotional attachment is weakness." Queen Zephyr's voice was ice cold. "It clouds judgment. It compromises mission integrity. Look at yourself now. You defend these primitives over your own mother." "I defend what's right," Lyrale said firmly, "and what's right is treating others with respect, regardless of their species or their level of technology." The room fell silent except for the hum of the station's systems. James could feel everyone holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. "You will return to the ship immediately," Queen Zephyr commanded. "You will undergo re-education to remove these dangerous emotional attachments. As for the human who corrupted you, his name is James," Lyrale interrupted. "Dr. James Rodriguez. And he didn't corrupt me. He showed me what I was missing. What you were missing was irrelevant. You had purpose. You had duty. I had nothing." Lyrale's voice echoed through the docking bay. "I was a tool, programmed to observe and report. But James helped me become a person who thinks and feels and chooses." James stepped forward again, his guards too stunned by the conversation to stop him. "Your Majesty, please, don't punish her for becoming someone who cares about others. Isn't that a good thing? You are in no position to speak of good things. Human, you have violated every protocol of interspecies contact. You have compromised a diplomatic mission. Most seriously, you have formed an inappropriate attachment with my daughter." "Inappropriate?" James felt his courage building. "What's inappropriate about two people from different worlds learning from each other? What's wrong with friendship? What's wrong with—" He paused, looking at Lyrale. "What's wrong with caring about someone?" "Everything," Queen Zephyr said coldly. "Now step away from my daughter." "No." The word came from Lyrale, clear and strong. "What did you say?" "I said no, Mother. James is not just some random human who happened to compromise my mission. He's not an inappropriate attachment or a diplomatic incident." Queen Zephyr's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Then what is he, daughter? What is this human to you that you would defy your queen? Your mother and your people?" The entire room seemed to hold its breath. James could feel his heart pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. Lyrale looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the human officers, then looking toward the communication console where she knew her mother was waiting for an answer. Finally, her gaze settled on James. Her skin began to glow with a warm, steady light that filled the entire docking bay. When she spoke, her voice was calm, certain. and filled with a strength that surprised everyone present. My human partner. The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. In the Andorian language, partner meant something far deeper than friendship or even romantic love. It meant two souls choosing to face life together as equals, supporting each other through every challenge and triumph. James felt the world shift around him. She hadn't just acknowledged their relationship, she had claimed it in front of both their peoples. Despite knowing the consequences, the silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Queen Zephyr's sharp, angry breathing through the communication system. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. James could hear his own heartbeat in his ears as everyone waited for Queen Zephyr's response to her daughter's declaration. The air in the docking bay felt thick with tension, and even the experienced human officers looked like they didn't know what to do next. Finally, Queen Zephyr's voice came through the speakers, but it was different now. Instead of the cold authority from before, there was something else: surprise. Maybe even confusion. Partner, she repeated slowly, you used the sacred word. Do you understand what that means, daughter? Liralay's skin glowed brighter. Yes, mother, I understand completely. Then you also understand that partnership bonds cannot be broken by royal decree. They are beyond the authority of queens and governments. James looked around the room, seeing the same confusion on everyone else's faces that he felt. This conversation had taken an unexpected turn. I understand, Lyrale said firmly. Another long pause. Then Queen Zephyr's voice returned, and this time James could hear something that might have been a sigh. Very well. If you have truly formed a partnership bond, then I must speak with this human as an equal. Bring him to me. Commander Davis, step forward. Your Majesty, we can arrange a formal meeting in our conference room. No. Queen Zephyr interrupted. If my daughter has chosen this being as her partner, then he will come aboard my ship as an honored guest, not a prisoner. This is a matter of Andorian law now. James felt his knees go weak. You want me to go to your ship? I want to understand what my daughter sees in you, the Queen replied. And I want to determine if you are worthy of the bond she has claimed. Dr. Patricia stepped closer to James. You don't have to do this, she whispered. We can try to negotiate. No, James said, surprising himself with his own certainty. If this is what it takes, I'll go. Lyrale moved to his side. I'll be with you every step of the way. What happened next was unlike anything the humans had ever experienced. Queen Zephyr's massive ship extended a bridge of pure light that connected to their docking bay. It looked impossible, but James could see that it was solid enough to walk on. The transport bridge will bring you safely to my ship, Queen Zephyr explained. Dr. Rodriguez. Princess Lyrale, please proceed. James had never been more terrified in his life, but Lyrale took his hand and smiled at him. Trust me, she said softly. Together, they walked across the bridge of light. James tried not to look down at the empty space below, focusing instead on Lirale's reassuring presence beside him. The interior of Queen Zephyr's ship was breathtaking. Everything seemed to be made of the same crystal-like material as the exterior, and soft light flowed through the walls like living rivers. But James barely had time to admire the architecture before he found himself face to face with the most powerful being he had ever encountered. Queen Zephyr was tall like her daughter, but where Lyrale was graceful, the Queen was commanding. Her presence filled the room, and James understood immediately why entire civilizations respected her authority. But what surprised him most were her eyes. They held the same intelligence and curiosity he had come to love in Lyrale. So, Queen Zephyr said, studying James carefully, you are the human who has captured my daughter's heart. Your Majesty, James began, trying to keep his voice steady. I never intended to cause problems for your family or your people. Intentions are less important than results. Dr. Rodriguez, sit. They settled around a table that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Queen Zephyr continued to study James with an intensity that made him feel like she was reading his thoughts. Tell me about yourself, she commanded, not your credentials or your position. Tell me who you are. For the next hour, James found himself in the strangest conversation of his life. Queen Zephyra asked him about his childhood, his dreams, his fears, and his hopes for the future. She wanted to know why he became a scientist, what drove him to work alone late at night, and how he had felt during those first meetings with Lyrale. "You were not afraid of her?" the Queen asked. "I was terrified," James admitted, "but I was also fascinated. She was so intelligent, so curious about everything. I've never met anyone who asked such thoughtful questions about human nature." "And when did you realize your feelings had changed from professional to personal?" James glanced at Lyrale, who nodded encouragingly. "When I started looking forward to our meetings, not just because of what I might learn, but because I enjoyed her company. When I started worrying about her safety when she was away. When I realized that she had become the most important person in my life." Queen Zephyra leaned back in her chair. "My daughter tells me you have shared advanced knowledge with her about human emotions and creativity. What did you hope to gain from this exchange?" "Nothing," James said honestly. "I just wanted her to understand us better. I thought if she could see the good things about humanity, our capacity for love, our desire to help each other, our ability to create beauty, maybe her people would see us as more than just primitives." "And what have you learned from her?" "That intelligence comes in many forms. That the universe is far more wonderful and complex than I ever imagined. That connection between different beings is possible, even when everything about their background says it shouldn't be." Queen Zephyra was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke to her daughter, Lyrale. "Leave us alone. I wish to speak with your partner privately." After Lyrale left, Queen Zephyra's entire demeanor changed. She seemed less like a powerful ruler and more like a concerned mother. "Do you love my daughter?" she asked simply. "Yes," James answered without hesitation. "Even though she is not human? Even though a life with her would mean leaving everything you know behind? Even though all of that? And if I told you that taking her as a partner would mean she could never return to our world? That she would be forever separated from her people?" James felt his heart break a little. "Then I would tell her to go home. I wouldn't want her to sacrifice her family and her people for me." Queen Zephyr smiled for the first time since they had met. "That, Dr. Rodriguez, is exactly the right answer." She stood and walked to a window overlooking the space station. "My daughter was right about one thing. Our people have become so focused on logic and efficiency that we have forgotten the value of emotional connection. Watching you two together, seeing how you bring out the best in each other. Perhaps there is wisdom in what you have found. Does this mean? It means I'm willing to try something unprecedented. Your partnership with my daughter will become the foundation for a new kind of relationship. Between our peoples, you will both serve as ambassadors, helping humans and Andorians understand each other." James could hardly believe what he was hearing. "You're giving us permission to stay together. I'm giving you a responsibility. You will represent the possibility that different species can form meaningful bonds. It will not be easy. Both of our peoples will question and challenge you. But if you can make it work, we can. Then let us begin." 6 months later, James stood in the newly constructed Interspecies Cultural Exchange Center, watching Lyrale teach a group of human children about the mathematics of star formation. The kids were completely enchanted by her, asking endless questions and laughing at her gentle jokes. The center had become a symbol of hope for both species. Human scientists worked alongside Andorian researchers, sharing knowledge and developing technologies that neither could have created alone. Cultural exchange programs allowed people from both worlds to learn from each other. It hadn't been easy. There had been protests, political debates, and countless bureaucratic challenges. Some humans feared the aliens, while some Andorians viewed the partnership as weakness. But slowly, minds were changing. "Proud of what we've built?" Lyrale asked, joining James by the observation window. "Proud of what you've built," he corrected. "I just fell in love with an amazing woman who happened to be from another planet," she laughed. The sound still as beautiful as the first time he had heard it. "And I fell in love with a man who saw past all our differences to find something worth fighting for." As they watched human children and young Andorians playing together in the center's garden, James realized that Queen Zephyr had been right about one thing. Their love story had become bigger than just the two of them. It had become proof that connection, understanding, and partnership could bridge any gap, even the space between worlds.